in that closed door meeting on the Hill, a source in the room where it was happening tells CNN that Trump went off topic a number of times when ranting about crime rates and election integrity issues. He apparently called Milwaukee, where the Republican National Convention is going to be held next month, quote, horrible. Republican Congressman from Wisconsin, Derek Van Orden, who was there, made clear that Trump was, quote, specifically referring to crime in Milwaukee, unquote, and not the city itself. Now, Democrats, including President Biden, well, they seized the opportunity to call out Trump over those comments. Biden tweeting, I happen to love Milwaukee, with a picture of the 2021 NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks at the White House. And by the way, who doesn't love Giannis? So just put that out there right now. Also, the mayor of the city, Cavalier Johnson, tweeting back, Milwaukee loves you back, President Biden. And Mayor Johnson joins me now. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us this evening. A lot of attention is coming to your city this summer with this convention, where we might even learn instantly who will be the running mate of the Republican nominee, Donald Trump. Welcome. How are you tonight?
Excellent. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining. You know, Trump, he's been trying to clarify tonight that he was talking about the crime rate and the 2020 election, not the city overall. What's your response?
Well, you know, it's quite interesting. There's a company here called the Milwaukee Pretzel Company, and as I heard all the responses from Republicans that were in the room, they were twisting themselves into so many different ways, kind of remind me of a pretzel. But the fact of the matter is this, Milwaukee is an excellent city. It's a wonderful city. It's a splendid city. It's a city that the Republican National Committee, Donald Trump's fellow counterparts in the Republican Party, chose as the host city for the Republican National Convention this year. So even according to Republicans, Milwaukee is a great place. And you don't even have to take the word of Republicans for that. Look at all the accolades that are coming to Milwaukee over the course of the last number of years, from Nat Geo to Condé Nast to the businesses that are investing in the city. This is a great place. And the former president and every Republican who will have the chance to come to our great city, they'll see that when they're here on the ground in Milwaukee for the convention.
Well, if you were to take Republicans at their word that the comments were about crime and not the city itself, the website, a website called Money Geek, compiled data from violent crime and property crime data from the FBI and research from the University of Miami and University of Colorado, and found that Milwaukee has the 9th highest cost of crime per capita in the country. So, I mean, what do you say about the conversation around crime that's happening in Milwaukee? Does it stand alone, or is it indicative of a larger national issue that must be addressed?
Sure, absolutely. This is a part of a national issue around crime, and particularly gun crime in the United States. We've got far too many guns in the hands of people who just should not have them. That's not a Milwaukee thing. That's a United States thing, unfortunately. But this is the key, though, right? Over the course of the last 2 years, right, crime in Milwaukee has steadily been dropping because in my administration, we've been offering solutions that have focused in on accountability and prevention. And you got to remember, too, that we're pulling ourselves out of issues around crime that raged after the pandemic, when the Trump administration didn't properly respond to the issues that had come to Milwaukee and other communities across the country as it relates to the pandemic. Only when President Biden got into office, got a handle on the pandemic, and provided true leadership, were we able to make the investments necessary and the focus necessary to bring crime down. And that's exactly what we've been doing in Milwaukee.
I mean, you know, there's a saying, right? Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Well, how about politically, don't bite the hand that could potentially feed you? Because Milwaukee is a very blue area, as you know. Wisconsin maybe broadly has a different spin, but you have said today that there are roughly 50,000 Republicans in the city, in a state that Biden only won by fewer than 21,000 votes. I do wonder if a comment like that coming from Trump could actually cost him the state in November.
Yeah, as you correctly point out, Laura, in Wisconsin, we're a purple state, and statewide elections are decided on a razor-thin margin. And so for the former president to call Milwaukee a horrible place, That's insulting the home to roughly 50,000 people who vote Republican here in this city, who have been here for a long time, who are raising their kids in the city, who spend time at all of the places in Milwaukee, who are integral members to our community right here in Milwaukee. So to call their home horrible, I think it's not the right move. It's kind of bizarre in a way. So I think at the end of the day, when it's in a state that's decided on a razor's edge, that may ultimately cost Donald Trump the election. What I said earlier today was, look, if he thinks that cities are horrible, then we should work in this city and cities all across the country to make sure that he doesn't have to live in another city that he probably thinks is horrible as well, and that's Washington, D.C.
Well, look, I happen to be a fan of Milwaukee. I'll be there for a wedding this coming fall and cannot wait to partake, and for the conventions as well. Really quick, Mayor, before I let you go, given the dynamics at play and the demographics, perhaps, it's always interesting for me on the outside looking in to see what the reaction is among your constituents when something like the RNC or a convention is coming to town. There's, on the one hand, the economic benefit of having it in your city and the thousands of people who will descend. On the other hand, there can be controversies surrounding being the location for that. Are you seeing or experiencing that in Milwaukee now?
Well, fortunately, Milwaukee is in some really rarefied air, in that we were selected to host the 2020 Democratic National Convention. Now, that didn't happen, of course, because of the pandemic, but what it did do is give us the runway in order to build the infrastructure for a proper national political convention. And so we've used some of the lessons of 2020. We built on those things. We have relationships in place with law enforcement here, law enforcement nationally. Our police chief has done a great job of bringing in law enforcement from across the U.S. is going to help us with this. And our partners over at the Secret Service and other federal law enforcement agencies have been critical partners in this. And we worked in a bipartisan way with Republicans and Democrats in order to boost the security grant, which had been stuck at $50 million since 2004 and got $25 million more for that effort here. So we've all been coming together around this. We want this to be a safe convention for everybody involved. That's what my priority is.
Mayor Cavalier Johnson, thank you so much for being here.
Let's turn now to this. Donald Trump's comments about Milwaukee being horrible just 1 month before the city hosts the Republican National Convention. And Sarah Longwell, these were comments that were made behind closed doors, we've reported yesterday at this meeting, where he said this is a horrible city. Let's take a look at what the Milwaukee mayor had to say back to him on local news just yesterday. Watch.
Donald Trump wants to talk about things that he thinks are horrible. All of us lived through his presidency, so right back at you, buddy. To insult the state that's hosting your convention, I think is kind of bizarre, actually. It's kind of unhinged in a way.
Right back at you.
Well, we heard your previous guest, the congressman, say that, of course, this isn't true, and we don't have it on tape, so I don't know. But it sounds like something Donald Trump would say. I don't know. I've heard him say a lot of these things. In fact, just going back to Mitch McConnell and the ritual humiliation he's suffering, Donald Trump calls him an old crow regularly. He's made racist smears against Mitch McConnell's wife, and so I don't know. It doesn't sound off base for Donald Trump to insult the city, probably with some racial undertones going into the convention.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's so interesting, the cities that he often targets. Milwaukee, Baltimore, countries that have people with higher melanin count in their skin, or cities as well that have black folks and brown folks. So, I go back to the beginning of this hour when you said, Sarah Longwell, about like people don't like this country right now. And so I often say, what is the why? So let's hypothetically say Donald Trump did say that Milwaukee was a horrible city. I wonder why. I wonder what is that undertone.
You left out Philly and D.C. as two favorite ones, and again,
he really doesn't like it here.
He doesn't like it here. There's a consistent thread here. What's remarkable?
He wants to move back, I hear.
Apparently.
I'd like him to not move back.
I know, me too.
But this all started with, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still get away with it. Now the question is, can you insult voters in one of the most critical swing states in 2024 and still get away with it? He needs some of the people in Milwaukee, even if many of them are Democrats, Democrats. He still needs the votes there, and it's remarkable if this comment was made, what it could mean for this. Back to what we talked about at the beginning, the hold this individual has on the party is really remarkable.
Well, and I think it's also worth noting that they have focused a lot on black men, right? And if they're actually, I mean, Milwaukee is a city where that actually could make a difference if it's going to happen. And just, I do want to play we've got a couple of House Republicans who came out after this meeting and they were trying to explain and put context around the president's comments, but just to leave it in contrast with a previous guest who insisted that this didn't happen. That is not what these Republicans who were in the meeting had to say. Watch.
He wasn't talking about the city. He was talking about specific issues in the city.
What he was talking about was the elections in Milwaukee. They're concerned about them.
So what I also kind of love about this, Sarah, is that this has actually made the local news, right? And that the local folks are pushing back. Because that actually, I think, is kind of, if this is going to make a difference, right, that he says that's why.
Yeah, look, I mean, Wisconsin's a really important state, and so there's a reason they're holding the convention in Milwaukee. It's because they want to win that state over, and so I think going into that state and insulting people is probably a bad call.